Today we are joined by three millennial lawyers to share their experiences about working through a pandemic. Spoiler alert, they are in no hurry to get back to the office. This is episode 11 of the Field Trip podcast. Let's go. Fiona Thatcher, Brooks and Barton Donaldson are three talented, aspiring young Australian lawyers working from London. As with most lawyers, since about March of this year, they have been working from home. We hear a lot of commentary about how people are adapting to work during these times, but we wanted to hear from this cohort directly. Fiona, Aaron and Barton talk about things as they were and as they are now, the things they hope we keep and leave for good after all this is finished, and a possible future where their work is not constrained by a physical office. I am Alistair Fitzgerald, the CEO of Field and your host for this podcast. This was an eye-opening discussion for me and made me ponder whether the current view of how quickly people will return to the office is quite as optimistic as a lot of landlords would hope it would be. I hope you enjoy. Okay, today on the field trip, we've got Fiona Thatcher, Barton Donaldson and Aaron Brooks, three lawyers who I had the privilege of working alongside many years ago, who have now relocated to London. And we're going to talk today about the impact of the pandemic on them and their working arrangements, and what has worked for them, what hasn't, and what the future might look like, or what they'd like the future to look like. Fiona, Barton, Aaron, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us on. Yeah.
No problem. Okay, so can I get each of you in turn, you can choose the order, just giving us a very quick bio of who you are and what you do, where you work.
You can start now.
Okay, so I'm Aaron Brooks. I'm a lawyer at Landlords in London, and I work in the energy and infrastructure team. So we do buying and selling infrastructure assets. We do lots of renewable energy projects, and I've been in London for just over 3 years now.
Cool. Fiona?
I'm Fiona Thatcher. I am an in-house lawyer at Swarovski in the branding and communications division. So basically we work on a lot of events, sponsorships, work with a lot of influencers. It's very fun. And I've also been in London for 3 years, and I've been at Swarovski for 2 years.
Cool. Barton?
And I'm Barton Donaldson. I am a legal contractor at British Telecom in their digital and data team. So we do a lot of work with the data that BT has on its customers and how they can, and we have to often advise the business on how they can ethically use that to improve their products and services. And I've been in the UK for 2 years, and I've been working at BT for nearly 2 years too.
Cool. Can I ask in respect of each of those because the whole impact of, a significant factor of the impact of the pandemic is physical interaction with other people. So on a day-to-day basis, who would, like pre-pandemic, in fact, put that aside, who do you deal with on a day-to-day basis, internally and externally? What's your typical workday look like in that regard?
So I would go into the office pre-pandemic. I would see the 100 or so lawyers that are in my immediate team, and in the Landlords London office, there's probably about 2,000 people that are in the building. So I'd work with primarily my team, but there'd also be a lot of interaction with other groups within the firm. We would probably have a couple of client meetings during the course of the week, and they would be usually in the office or at the client's office. And then we might have a small handful of kind of networking or business development events that might be at a coffee store nearby, or some kind of function space around London.
Fiona?
So I would walk into the office. So it's about almost an hour's walk away from here. I think all three of us walk into work, which...
I don't anymore. I catch the
Barton! Oh, okay.
I catch the bus now. It's too far.
Oh, it's not too far.
It's an hour's walk.
But yeah, that was like a really nice way of kind of being out and about in London. So you'd see everyone kind of also commuting in, which is strangely, it was a very important feature of my life pre-pandemic that I don't do now at all.
Did a lot of people do that?
I feel like if you could, physically, you would. I mean, you save a lot of money. I mean, a problem for me was always kind of walking behind cars. That was always the problem. I always felt, you know, the air isn't very good in London, so it always felt a little bit hazardous walking along the main streets. But a great way to get in exercise as well. So, yeah, but mostly free. So that's, yeah. But then when I would get into the office, it was a small office, so 3 levels, definitely not as many people who worked at or work at Linklaters, but I'm in a team of 4, so I would always see my team and the finance team, who are also a team of 4, and you know, we were in the center of Mayfair, so on lunch breaks we would go out and be surrounded by thousands of tourists, and we'd have lunch in restaurants and like be very, very social. Quite a social person, and I love social interactions, and so I also got a lot of value out of being surrounded by people all the time.
And Barton?
I guess I kind of had a similar experience to Fiona in a way, in that when I used to live a bit closer to where I work, so I used to walk there. Now I live a little bit further away, probably an extra 20 minutes. So I'll catch the bus in. So I think in a way I do miss the commute a little bit, because it would be the time when I would either read a book or I'd listen to a podcast or something like that on the way into work. And I feel like that's a good way of starting off the day. And then I'd get in. My team itself is reasonably small. It's only about 4 or 5. That's sort of what it fluctuates. But we sit with other lawyers in sort of the overall data privacy team, and we sit right next to the competition and regulatory advisory team as well. So all in all, if it was like a full day in the office, there was maybe like 40 people in the area where I sat.
Yep. And they're all the people you interact with most commonly?
Most commonly, yeah. There was also we also in terms of the actual business itself, there's the digital and artificial intelligence team, who they actually sit in a different building from BT Centre where I work, only about a 10-minute walk. So we would occasionally actually walk to the building where they were, and we'd sort of spend some time with them and meet them there, or they'd come and meet us in BT Centre. So and the number of and BT itself is a really big organisation, and there's a lot of people there normally. So on a day-to-day basis, you're walking around a lot of people, and similar to Fiona, you go outside for lunch, and BT Centre is right next to St Paul's, so there's lots of tourists around, lots of shops, lots of people, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's probably what I get up to in my day.
Cool. And focusing still on that pre-pandemic time, when it comes to digital tools for communicating, so both on, I'm keen to talk about sort of your personal experience and your work experience with those tools. So what are the range of things that you would use? And I'll and talk through all of it, even though everyone knows that for work you probably use a lot of email. Just explain how much of those things you would use, or any of the tools that you might have migrated to now, whether you use those at all. And don't gloss over the personal things. So I think that, for me, that's an interesting insight into sort of potentially into communication styles of the future. Anyone can jump in. I won't direct traffic.
Well, I was kind of thinking that it's interesting that pre-pandemic we were actually already very used to basically distance and not being able to travel and go and hang out with friends and family. So very used to... By
virtue of the fact that you're in London and all of your friendship group, or a lot of it, and family would be in Australia.
So... I mean, I've had actual conversations with friends in Australia where you'd get a message on WhatsApp, and then they'd respond via Instagram message, and then you'd end up having a call on Facebook Messenger.
Yep.
and just quite seamlessly using all three or other ones at once.
And do you like I've seen there are some apps that are starting to consolidate different chat streams because you find a chat functionality in so many different apps. Do you ever see those, or you just sort of juggle the 3, 6, 8, however many different things you use?
You've got all the apps on your phone, so it doesn't really, sometimes you don't really register where you've gotten the message from, and you check one app and it won't actually be there. It's just kind of quite a normal thing, and we're not the generation, we're the era of like just flicking through like different things on our phone all the time. So I was already very used to having very long conversations on the phone as a way of video, but actually I found I wasn't really that keen on video calls so much. It's a little bit of a
chat first.
Yeah.
Chat first, yeah. Just one question. Maybe this is I sort of date stamping me, which isn't difficult, but I find, because I run a number of different chat streams with people that I use for work in particular, and sometimes I find that I might, a development team for some reason likes using Skype chat, so we do that, and then if you get a message on LinkedIn, say the icon's similar, and you sort of jump in, and one or two times I've responded to I thought one was another and I've responded to the wrong one. You guys probably have more influx of chat streams in your sort of mobile device. You ever fallen foul of that, or is that just what old people do?
As in you send the message to the wrong person?
Yep.
I think everyone
Yeah. Especially with pre-populating in emails.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I've done that one too many times.
And so, sorry, Fiona, you were saying video calls prior, not so keen on those?
I mean, maybe it's like 30-70. Most of the time when I call family or friends, it'll be a voice call, and then often because I don't know, usually like you'll be in bed, or you'll have like your dressing gown on, and never really looking your best when you've got time to make those calls to Australia. So, and I don't know, it's very distracting also having your face there, just and on a small screen you can't really avoid it. Like, this is okay because you're just on one screen and our picture's somewhere off there, but I find it distracting. But also at work we have different regional teams around the world. So we were quite used to having Skype phone calls with teams in Italy and France and Singapore. So the transition into the the COVID era, communicating via Skype call or Microsoft Teams is increasingly popular for us.
Yep.
Very seamless because we were already doing that anyway.
So do you think Europe is better than that because of the geographic layout, because of the interaction? So a lot of UK-based businesses would by necessity or be interacting with a lot of different European destinations, and so that sort of fragmentation of communication is more a factor in the UK than you would find in Australia?
I mean, London is so multinational. London
not
is
even Europe.
London is just a hub for, communicating with the rest of the world and doing business with the rest of the world. So it probably was already. I can't really speak to what the experience is like in Australia in terms of. I don't know. Maybe you guys can, but I've
certainly found you can certainly exist professionally within one city. And even a city like Brisbane, there are a lot of people who would have the majority of their dealings with people based in Brisbane. So I don't think that's unusual. What about you, Barton and Aaron? You sort of chat first?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. I mean, when I worked in Brisbane, everyone that I worked for, except for maybe a very, very small number of people, were in Brisbane as well, whereas over here it's almost the opposite. I think lots of the people that we work with are not based in London, actually, and because we've got offices in Europe and in other places, we definitely speak regularly and connect regularly with people who are not in the same city as us.
Mm-hmm. And how did you do that?
I think pre-pandemic, it was usually just a phone call. You'd send around details, everyone would join in. It's gotten better with kind of online meeting rooms, so you can kind of see who's on and you can kick them off or mute them, or you can sort of play around with that. We've also got some functions where we have rooms in Linklaters that link up to virtual rooms in other offices. So we've done work where we might be working with a team at Linklaters in America, and the client is in America, so can go to those offices, but the London team can connect up to them, and we've got screens and cameras that can,
like a closed loop sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So lots of that kind of thing.
Yeah. And did you use a lot of video then before? Did you use those kinds of things a lot? Because
No.
the status quo was always it'd all be email based. Like you get on phone calls, but so much lawyering was done via email.
Oh yeah, I think definitely the majority is sending emails, and then the default was probably phone calls. But now the default is becoming usually more like Zoom style calls, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Cisco, that kind of thing. They're becoming the norm.
And Barton, did being in a technology company, and I'm sort of drawing equivalents to Telstra, and I suppose you find pockets of innovation and pockets of non-innovation, I suppose. What was the experience like for you, communication-wise, prior to the pandemic?
Prior to the pandemic, in some ways it wasn't all that different from what we do now. I think BT was relatively well set up to deal with this, at least from the legal functions perspective, because BT in and of itself is very fragmented throughout the UK. So they've got big offices outside of London in like Hertfordshire. They've got offices in Bristol, up in the north, up in Scotland. And a number of the people who were in the privacy team who I worked with weren't London based. They were either outside of London or they were somewhere else in the UK. So they would come into London every now and then into the office. But a lot of the time, if you were dealing with them, you were talking to them on Skype. And just before the pandemic, we transitioned from using Skype for Business to using Microsoft Teams, and it was quite fortuitous.
Yeah, great timing.
Yeah, because it's in terms of being like a collaborative workspace kind of software, it's been really, really helpful, and being like able to arrange people into teams and be able to post things online, and that sort of integration with Office 365 and being able to edit documents together and all that sort of thing. So in terms of like how we actually communicated, I found that before the pandemic we were already talking on Skype all the time. I don't even have a phone at work. All the calls that we did were some sort of online teleconference, like internet-based teleconference. A lot of the time for my internal stakeholders, if they wanted to get a hold of me, they wouldn't even email me. They just IM me over Skype and say, "Hey, I've got this thing. Do you want to have a chat about it?" And we'd either set up a call later in the day or we'd just go straight onto Skype and talk about it then. So in terms of the situation at home, that hasn't really changed at all. The only thing that's changed is the internal meetings with people, where you would occasionally do those with the internal stakeholders in person to talk about stuff, or within the legal team itself. Those are just now completely online. That's really the major change that's happened for me.
Right. And so from, you're talking about using sort of IM or DM, like a message-based sort of internal communication tool. And I'm guessing the majority or all of your communications, all of your work, all of your clients, I suppose, are all internal clients. Is that right? You would much less frequently deal with external parties, or am I misunderstanding that?
It depends. Like a lot of, there are some. If I'm working on a project where we are actually negotiating something with another party, then yes. But once again, sort of Teams permits you to invite other people in to have those discussions. So, but I would say that probably 70% of my dealings are with internal stakeholders rather than external stakeholders.
And so that was majority messaging over email, yeah, prior to. And you got sort of Aaron and Fiona, was that the same for you, or particularly Fiona with a similar in-house environment? Did you find that, or you were still grinding out the emails more commonly than not?
We're very email based,
Yep.
very email based. But kind of the more, and we don't have a huge amount of external communication in our legal team. Everything is kind of dealt with directly by the commercial teams.
Yep.
But kind of actually the more, you would always need to have an original email to set up a discussion or whatever, but then depending on the relationship that you have with the commercial team member, which kind of over time, usually as it becomes better, it also becomes more casual and less formal. If you have a good relationship with a commercial team member, they might even reach out to you via IM first and just be like, oh, hey Fiona, like, what do you think about this? And that would probably also be their way of bypassing our central mailbox database and kind of getting priority as well. But I mean, I quite like that. And then you can end up having a little chat on IM about, how their day is going and stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe I'm just bad. But like sometimes, that IMing can lead to a call, and then sometimes you can end up having quite long calls with people. Like in the pandemic, I think that's actually quite nice as well, because some people are actually just living on their own, like all around the world. And that phone call that you have with them might be their one phone call of the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I can empathise with that scenario. So what does your working arrangement look like now? Are you all working from home still? Are you going into the office? Mix of both. What does it look like?
I haven't been into the office since March.
Right.
I've been working from home at the living room table. I've upgraded kind of my work from home setup to have a screen and a webcam, a stand for my laptop. But it's been working from home for 6 months now.
Right. Is anyone from Linklaters back in the office, or it's yep? So is that your choice? You're given a choice to go back or not?
Yeah, so given a choice, I think we had kind of a phase one, which was very kind of low facilities. So it was basically offering one floor in kind of a common area where you could go and bring your laptop, sit at a desk, and then go home, hot desk. Now kind of phase two is everyone is permitted to go back to the office if they want to their own office, except we usually share offices. And so that means that you've got to book in advance, so that if there's two people who would usually be in the same office, they get separated, so no one sits in the same office. But it's elective entirely whether you want to go back or not. And I think as of last week, government guidance is for people who can work from home to continue to do so.
Right. And so will you continue to work from home for as long as you're allowed to do that?
I have no strong desire to go back to the office. I miss a couple of features of the office, and it's usually around the people and the facilities that my office can give me. Gym and that kind of thing is really good. But I can feel like I can work really well. I work. I guess I've adjusted pretty well to home work, and we're lucky that we're office workers and can do that.
Yeah. Just to sort of dig into this a little bit, because I'm quite interested. So in what additional tools did you need, whether it was software or hardware, in addition to what you just described, so an extra screen and a webcam and a stand for your laptop, what additional tools did you need to make that work, and what did you have to provide, and what were you given?
That's just about it. I think the only other thing is a chair. So I was just thinking on these chairs, actually, the living room wooden chairs. Yep. Work gives us kind of sort of the standard, like a roller, sort of nice, more comfortable office chair. Yep. Work gave us, everyone, kind of a £200 allowance back in April or May to update their home office, because basically you would have just had a laptop at that stage. But other than those things that I've mentioned already, there wasn't really anything else that I needed to keep going with work. Yeah,
and the technology, I imagine, for an organisation like Linklaters would have been there or thereabouts for allowing that, that transition to happen.
Yeah, and they've progressively rolled out software updates. Video conferencing has been a big one. Yep. Most of the things that we needed was already ready on our laptop. So aside from a couple of tweaks, the IT was already there to work from home.
Right. Interesting. What about you, Fiona? Are you still working at home?
Yeah, still working from home. What happened was, so my boss is Singaporean, and I think in Asia they are, I think, much better experienced. Well, yeah, they have experience. They have a lot of skill and knowledge in dealing with epidemics because, there was SARS and
MERS. Yeah.
yeah. And actually, from the start of January, my boss was she was like, this, I can't remember, I think it was just coronavirus, Wuhan coronavirus is going to be really big. And she was starting to track it. And, we talked about it a lot in our, in our meetings. And so I, like, quite early on, Matt Proctor came and visited us in London in February, and I was like, it's doom and gloom, and Matt was like, no, it's going to be fine. But because Michelle, yeah, Michelle was very, guys, we need to take this very seriously. So when Aaron and I went to Egypt for Aaron's birthday, Michelle said, when you come back, I don't want you coming into the office for 2 weeks. So this was well before the virus had even reached Europe. So we did that, and it was while we were quarantining at home that the virus broke out in Italy. And it's really interesting because this was my boss, who obviously had control over her team, but the wider business was really going a lot more on what the government was saying. So even though the virus was breaking out in northern Italy, where we have an office in Milan. Obviously, it's the fashion capital. We had commercial team people flying in and out of Milan around that time, coming back into the office, which our team was worried about, but everyone else was like, yeah, it's fine. And so we really waited, as a business, we waited until, from that point on, from Egypt, I was then working from home. But we were very much, as a business, guided by what the government said. So it wasn't really until the government said everyone try and start working from home that we did. And then when the government quite recently was like, now everyone should be trying to go back to the office as much as possible, the office opened up. They've staggered it so that, half the workplace, people are not obliged to come in at all. But if you do come in, you have to come in on only 2 days a week, and you get allocated those 2 days so that there's not too many people in the office at once. And you get this. So all of our stuff was packed away into a box so that we didn't have stuff on our desk. And when we came in, we had this massive pack of just basically virus essentials. It was like hand sanitizer, like wipes, gloves, masks. And very, very strict rules about what we could and couldn't do in the office, and a cleaner who came around I think he comes around every hour or something, just desanitizing everything, and, hand sanitizers on every wall. In terms of working from home, I really thought I would struggle because I do like hanging out with people so much, but originally we were both working down here in this space, and I think we actually, within the space of like 2 weeks, just drove each other crazy because it would be impossible for us to work across from each other. Impossible, always on calls. So we had this speaks to our privilege, right? I know you said we're speaking for our generation, but a lot of people aren't in this position. We were able to clean out.
They try homeschooling.
We cleaned out one of the bedrooms upstairs and we turned it into a home office. Yep. So I sit up there now, and Aaron was very much like, oh, we don't need to buy anything extra, but I was like, so I bought a desk, a chair, but I just bought all this stuff and then claimed it back as a work expense on tax, and I got it back very quickly, which was good. But yeah, I actually really love working up there now. And one thing that I would say is, I have soundproof headphones, which are just amazing. I wear them every day now, and like they were good before the pandemic, but now just having investing in a really good set of headphones I think is important. And the second thing is that here in the UK, I was going to say this before, the internet is so good. Yeah, I remember the days of internet in Australia, like being at home. And like here, whether you're at home or in the office, like our internet is so fast. Like you can have, multiple, video calls happening, like for both Aaron and I, to no problem. And, if we had other people here watching Netflix, like they could do that.
Mm.
Like I thought when the pandemic broke out, oh my gosh, like how could you go through this without like really fast internet?
So what do you, sorry, nerdy question, what speed do you get up and down on your internet connection there? Like I think we run at about, we're sort of 50 down, 20 up on our plan, which is like a mid-level NBN plan. And that's heaps.
Bytes?
Pardon me?
Megabytes?
Yeah.
50 megabytes?
Yeah.
I think we're more than that.
Yeah, we're more than that.
I'm just going to look up and see if I
Nice.
can find that average.
Well, it's funny, we just, because it's school holidays at the moment here, and we went away and I had to do some work. I was sort of managing a development cycle, so I was having to do work, and the internet where we went, which is on the Sunshine Coast, was that much slower there that it would I just couldn't do certain things, like, refreshing, testing systems and having to wait for, the system to refresh to be able to see things. It just ground to a halt when we got back, and I got back to my home environment, and having that all work made a very big difference. But it's an excellent point that without really, really good internet, you struggle in this kind of environment.
And I think in Australia, like good internet is really concentrated in the cities. And if you have this, which is that people start moving out of cities because you're able to work from home, I think that's going to be quite big in Australia, where in the more rural or regional areas, you've got pretty poor internet. So working from home isn't going to be as easy an option. But like here, all across the UK, like no matter where you are, like you get great internet. Although my 4G wasn't great in Cornwall.
Yeah, I found that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear Cornwall's terrible. Don't go there. And what about you, Barton? What's your setup?
Mine's nowhere near as fancy. It's one of those things where I put it off the entire time. Like, I'll get a screen at some point. I'll get a chair at some point, and I just gotten used to just clacking away on my laptop. And but what I do find is that I live with my partner Kat, and we've got our setup is just a living room and a bedroom with a bathroom. So, but the living room's quite big and it's quite open plan. So for most of the day, we'll work in the same space. But if we have calls at the same time, one of us has to go in the bedroom because Kat has told me that I speak far too loud when I'm on the phone, and she's like, "You're literally yelling on the phone, so I can't deal with this." So
it's like snoring. You never believe it if anyone tells you, Barton.
That's right. She says that you need to bring it down a bit. But so that's the only, I guess, adjustment that we've made is occasionally I'm on the screen. And people go, is that a bed head behind you? Are you in your bedroom? I'm like, yeah. I've been kicked into the bedroom. So, but no, I don't have any of the other setup. To be honest, I haven't needed it. I did have a screen at work, but surprisingly, I've just kind of adjusted to working just on a laptop. I think having a screen would genuinely be quite good, but I just haven't gotten one. Apparently, I can get one through work. I just haven't done it yet. But I've actually found that working with just a laptop has actually been fine. I've been able to still get everything done that I've needed to.
That's interesting. I mean, I have 3 staring at me now, but what I do is a little bit different. Just do you find this perhaps a generational question? Do you? Or I suppose let me ask it in two levels. One is, do you think you could work indefinitely as you're currently working, or what things would you change? And the second part to that is, have you observed from speaking to your colleagues who might be older, have you observed any different different preferences or observations from them, putting aside challenges with family? Because not that that's not a very significant factor, but it's kind of a different, that sort of skews the sample size or the sample information, I suppose. So could you keep doing what you're doing indefinitely, or if not, what would you change? And do you think there are any generational differences in that kind of view?
I was actually thinking when you were talking that, like, even for, or maybe particularly for older people, and it's a really big factor in London. I'm not sure how big a factor it is in Brisbane. Here, the commute is such a big feature of London life, and not in a good way. A lot of older people, it's kind of when you're younger, you can live in central London, even though it's extortionately expensive, because it's like, you get access to the nightlife and the culture and the food and all that. But as you get older and you have a kid, the thing to do is to move out to literally 2 hours away. So for older people, 2 hours in, 2 hours out every day was totally normal. And for a lot of people, at least half of that would be in the tube, crushed up against someone's armpit in a really hot, smelly, like horrible packed environment that was, rush hour on the London Underground. So I actually think, from talking to my colleagues at work, that they actually really do not miss that commute. I mean, for us, waxing lyrical about a walk to work or, a short bus ride, that's not actually the reality for most Londoners. And it's not actually just the time that you lose away from your family. It's also a massive expense. Like for people who live, 2 hours, like out, say in Slough or like Reading, it's like £5,000 a year, like at least. So I don't think that they miss that aspect at all. I could definitely work from home indefinitely. A really nice feature of it that we have recently discovered or invented, or like maybe I'll just like patent it now, or like claim
it's yours,
copyright.
Fiona. It's yours. What is it?
It's a workation. Where
never heard that before.
Yes. So basically, Aaron and I did it a couple of weeks ago, where we booked last minute flights to Milan. We were driven up to Lake Como, and we spent a week in Lake Como working out of a beautiful Airbnb that had a view of the lake. So we didn't take any time off, but during lunch, in the mornings, in the evening, we could wander around Lake Como. It was actually, accommodation in Europe is so much cheaper than accommodation in the UK, and we had like the best time. And it wasn't really a holiday, but it kind of was at the same time. And we actually have friends who, when they absolutely got sick of the pandemic, they live in Scotland, and they ended their lease and they bloody moved to Greece. And so now they're working like out of a beach in Greece or something. And that's a temporary thing, and they might move and live in Croatia or whatever. And so I think...
And you're not bitter at all.
No, but I'm inspired. Like, I think that's great. And I really love the idea that we're moving away from offices. I really love that idea. I'm a believer in, as long as you get your work done, you shouldn't need to show face. I'm a huge anti-prison.
How have you found... So can I just sort of jump in there? How have you had many instances of really pressured work? And so everyone has that from time to time, but have you had any, say, sort of significant projects that you've really, really been under the pump, where you felt that I really wish I was in the office handling this now rather than working from home?
No, not so far. I could certainly envisage things that may come that would prompt that kind of a feeling, where it'd be useful to either have all of the team in one place, or have kind of the facilities available. But I also think times are moving on. The things that I was thinking of is when we'd need to organise big signings or have lots of people, but we're shifting away from that.
Yeah, that'll go much like that's on its last legs if it's not dead already. There seems to be a lot of tech coming into that space, and it's quite staggering why it hasn't happened sooner than this. Any lawyer I'm sure you guys have seen it, and I'm sure people who will listen to this will have seen, these mass signings with, boardrooms full of documents and having to physically sign things. Just a ridiculous waste of money and time, and error-prone process. But hopefully that will fizzle away.
About DocuSign the other day, and I was just in my mind like, this is really absurd. Like, we're like a very small legal team, and we do everything over DocuSign, and so we're of DocuSign, and Aaron in this like company with all the resources in the world, like they're still actually like literally pushing huge like paper documents around. So that was crazy.
I don't even do the signings at work. The procurement team takes care of all that. I negotiate the contract, and we get agreement on the contract, and then they take care of the signature, and they do it all by e-signature. So yeah.
And so, Barton, Aaron, what about the question of could you continue working indefinitely in the current arrangement while Fiona is, sitting on some idyllic Croatian coastline and you're sitting back in London? Is that going to work for you?
Yeah, I think I could definitely continue to work indefinitely from home. I do like the aspect of being able to see people from the office. And I mean, for me, a lot of the time, work is not so much about the work. It's actually about the people that you do it with, because at the end of the day, you can kind of be a lawyer anywhere, and you're kind of doing the same thing no matter where you are to some extent, I feel. So it's usually the people that you work with that makes the difference in terms of enjoying work, at least for me. So I think the fact that I did already know the people that I worked with before going into the pandemic was a good thing. I think it might be, I might say something different if I had started a new job during the pandemic and I hadn't met anyone that I'd worked with in person. I might say, well, I think I wouldn't mind going in the office to actually meet these people. The advantage of having already worked with these people for, a year and a half before going into the pandemic has made it a lot easier, because I already know how these people work. I know how they like to receive things. I know the best times to catch them for certain things, all that sort of stuff. But if to continue working where I am at the moment, I definitely could. And I guess it also depends on what kind of work you're doing. If I was just contracting in places sort of a month at a time or something like that, again, I think I could definitely work from home. Fiona's point about the working from home is that you can pick where you want to work from, and you eliminate that whole you need to live in London, or you can't live. You can live outside of London without having to commute in, all those sort of things. It makes a huge difference. It's one of those things like, if I was back in Brisbane, I would contemplate whether if I even wanted to live in Brisbane, maybe I'd try and go live up on the Sunshine Coast somewhere or something like that. And if I could still work for somewhere in Brisbane, like that would be the ideal, really.
Yeah, I think that's because reflecting on my own experience, that's something we think about a lot, and have done for a while. Certainly pre-pandemic, the work that we do with Field is certainly set up for me to be able to do things from anywhere. I wonder though, because I've been speaking with a lot of people about this, and most of them are local, and there's certainly a desire for people to get back to physical offices. And so some of the factors, the 2-hour each-way commute that you're talking about, Fiona, that's prevalent for many in London, not so much of an issue here. So maybe the pain isn't as great, but that will be. I think it's a very interesting thing about how that will transpire and how it will differ from location to location. I've certainly heard some people have spoken of major world cities as potentially aging down, and potentially becoming more accessible for younger people to go and access and experience, that sort of that melting pot of people with energy, enthusiasm and youth and ideas, and maybe taking, cities like New York or London or similar places back to perhaps how they were before they were so unattainable financially to live in. That will be interesting. You've touched on your points, Barton, about, it's okay. I can keep doing what I'm doing because I know all the people I'm working with. I mean, obviously that's a hurdle we're really yet to come to. And another thing I hear spoken about a lot is also how do we innovate online? That doesn't seem to be as easy as doing it in person. That exchange of ideas, building on ideas. I think few people would say that an online environment is as effective for doing that as it would be for doing it in person. But I'm interested, have you experienced a virtualization of either a social interaction or something like, that you would normally do in person, like, an idea brainstorming kind of thing? Have you experienced a virtualization of that, and can you tell us about it? And did it go well or not? Like, are you having Friday drinks on Zoom or that kind of thing?
We have a book club, and it went virtual during the pandemic.
Yeah.
A workbook club or an outside of workbook club?
Like, all of us are in the book club.
Right. And so now you sit and... And so how many people in the book club?
About 10?
Yeah.
Okay. So you just have the mosaic on the screen and everyone has a glass of something in their hand and a book?
Yeah, very, very. I mean, we also downloaded in maybe April, when we realized it was going to be a few months left to go. We downloaded Jackbox games, and you can actually play kind of like board games, but virtually with people. And so it's so good. Yeah, it's great. You get like a glass of wine, and you've got them up in a screen, and you can see them, but you're playing like with your phones, with your computers, kind of the main screen. And yeah, it's actually really fun.
So like a distributed board game, but electronic.
Yeah, it's like trivia and just kind of like Pictionary-esque games, and yeah.
Would you go back to your in-person book club as soon as that's available?
We already had a book club. I mean, Aaron and I missed it because we were in Italy. Did you go?
No, I didn't go. No.
Okay, none of us went, but sorry, Lucy. But
I was busy.
It was The Colour Purple.
Yeah, I read the book.
I read the book too.
I know, it was great.
It was great.
Colour Purple, good book.
Yeah.
I'll find some time and read that one. What about work? Are they doing those kinds of things with work, or are they just work's work and there's much less social interaction?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing we've done virtual Friday drinks, and that hasn't been actually kind of a work sanctioned thing. That was almost just people wanting to do that, and that being the only thing that was available, I suppose. As kind of lockdown has phased up and phased down, we have done some in-person catch-ups in the park, not in the office, but we've definitely done some Friday night Zoom drinks, which has worked really well. I think the new joiners is a really big challenge, because we get graduates or trainees every 6 months rotating through the group, and so they have exactly the problems that Barton spoke about, of trying to work out how to work with this new group of people, and how to understand how the team works on a kind of a personal basis. And we haven't, besides sort of extending the work drinks to them and doing that virtually, I think doing some trivia as well has been done, but that's a really hard gap to plug, I think, at the moment, is bringing those people into the team. And
so how do you do that? How are you virtualizing the mentoring process and the learning process?
It's all just basically like we're doing now, in terms of phone calls or video calls, small groups. So it's really been slimmed down in terms of the size. So you might have had a partner giving a presentation to the 15 new joiners in the team, but now it might be one senior person to 4 new joiners. So you've brought it down so that people feel like they can speak and they've got the opportunity to ask their questions in a more personalised way, rather than the full group.
And is there sort of packaging up of content in different ways? Are there more sort of pre-recorded videos that are replacing what perhaps would have been done like by an in-person presentation, interactive tools for learning, that kind of thing as well?
Yeah, both. So I think still continuing to deliver training with a presenter, having a webcam and just talking to people dialing in on WebEx or Zoom, but there's also a lot of watch this training session. It's kind of an hour. It's not just watch a video for an hour. It's some kind of interactive learning as well, but there's kind of a hybrid at the moment.
Right. And so do they have, I'm just really interested on that, because I think learning's going to really explode in some of the new types of methods that we're going to see. Do they, like, they're having interactive Q&A embedded in these things, or is it? What does that look like?
Yeah, not super interactive like that, but there'll be quizzes inside.
Yep.
There'll be separate meeting rooms. So you'll go in, have a big chat, and then you'll go away to a kind of a separate virtual room,
Yep.
and you'll work on a problem, and then you'll come back and talk about that. So those kind of things are being used. I think they're kind of the main ways that they're trying to do training a little bit differently at the moment.
Mm. And are you seeing, like for all of you, are you seeing people being brought? Are you seeing more people being brought on board in this space? Not just like, I'm thinking specifically like a content creation kind of space, because I mean I can see an opportunity for big organisations to be using video much more, and it won't all be sort of direct one-on-one. There'll be a lot more pre-recorded stuff, and most pre-recorded corporate video I've seen in the past has been pretty rubbishy compared to a lot of things that are out there. Any movement on those kinds of things that you're seeing?
I mean, we've had a lot of pre-record. I mean, our company's going through a massive restructure at the moment. So we're an Austrian company with offices all over the place. I think it would have been necessary for that to happen regardless of whether it was in a pandemic. Very hard to schedule a call with everyone at the same time. So we've had a lot of very high production value pre-recorded videos where, very senior people in the company explain changes or new initiatives to us.
That'd be more of the sort of in the DNA of your organisation, though. I would have thought that the high production value, probably closer to a core skill set. You'd have those skills in house, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
More so perhaps than a law firm or a big telco. Just conscious. I'm looking at the clock. Conscious of time. For each of you, one thing that you really hope doesn't come back post-pandemic, and one thing that you really hope stays post-pandemic, that's a product of the lockdown process.
I have one that immediately comes to mind that was almost my number one peeve before the pandemic anyway, and that is, and I saw a lot of this at Allen's, but really everywhere I've ever worked, people coming into the office when they are sick. People coming in with their colds, their coughs, their fevers, often, sometimes actually, for weeks or months at a time, spreading their germs to everyone, possibly not washing their hands while touching everything. Like, I hope that that's general hygiene has improved.
Yep.
But, like, this notion that we have of, like, oh, like, you're not a good worker if you don't, like, just power through. Like, for God's sake, like, stay at home, rest and recover, and don't come in and infect everyone. And, like, my parents are doctors, so when we were kids, like, and if we were sick, we would stay at home. Like, there was none of this, oh, just soldier on. So I always hated it when, not just, like, seeing other people coming into the office sick, but when you could feel so strongly that expectation that you come in, and that if you didn't come in, even if you were, like, at death's door, you were slacking off. Like, I really hated that, so I really hope that never comes back.
Yeah, I think there's that sort of hand in hand with the needing to be seen issue, that, if you're not present and visible, then you're not doing the work. Interestingly, though, I've still, speak to partners in law firms similar age to me, not, still wanting people to be present, still not comfortable with people not being there. So perhaps still some generational sort of mismatch of thinking there. But I agree, Fiona, hygiene, very important. And did you have another one? You kind of had a bet each way there. That's sort of one thing that you hope hygiene will become first and foremost, and lack of will disappear. Do you have one more? Or we'll leave it with that. Do you? Yeah. No. I'll switch to Barton. One thing you want to keep, one thing you hope you never see again.
Mine is sort of two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Again, I think pre-pandemic, a lot of workplaces were highly inflexible in terms of how they let their workforce work, and I think we're seeing a little bit of a flip side to that. But I think the other part of that is also an understanding of people's circumstances. The one thing that I've noticed throughout conversations that people have had is people asking if other people are okay. And not just from are you unwell, but from a mental health perspective as well. And I think that that's honestly been really, really important, because it's been, I think this time for a lot of people, more so than anything, it's just been really tough from a mental health perspective. Just being separated from people, not being able to see your family. And I know over here that that I'm sure all of us have felt this way at some stage, because not only because we're isolated here, but because we're isolated from our families back home. Sometimes it's been a real struggle to think that we're so far away from all these other people that we love. So the fact that people at work now, and I've taken 1 or 2 days this year as kind of mental health days, and that's been fine with work. So I think that I don't know if that would have necessarily been the case pre-pandemic. I don't think people were. I think it was sort of always in the back of their minds, and I think a lot of organisations pay lip service to, oh yeah, we need to have mindfulness, we need to care about people, blah blah blah, without actually doing it. But I think that at least the people within my team, I think the perception has changed of, well, you shouldn't take a day off because that's not important. It's more important to do the work. I think people have realised, well, maybe if you take a day or 2 off, you can then come back stronger and be a better worker. And that's what I hope stays. I hope that, I don't know if it'll necessarily happen within law firms. I think that I think that they have a long way to go, a lot of them, in terms of how they consider that and how they treat that. But I think in a lot of organisations, I'm hoping that concern for people and how they're working and how they're feeling will stay going forward.
That's an excellent point. I don't think we're going to see for a while the full impact of on mental health of this whole experience. How about you, Aaron? One thing to keep going. Just be different. Give me 2. One thing to keep, one thing to throw away.
The thing that I hope doesn't come back is kind of the regular in-person catch-ups. Yes. So for in a work context. So there's lots of, we just need to have a 10-minute chat each week to check in on this thing. It inevitably goes for half an hour, and we don't really talk about very much. So that's
on a work on a specific matter, or just perhaps your main supervising person saying how things going. Like what are you talking about there?
The former, so the work kind of just checking in to see what's going in, what's going on a matter. The personal check-ins are good, but it's almost fixing 10 minutes, once or twice a week, every week, just to chat
to see
on
what
a matter.
You're doing, monitoring what you're working on. So sort of like a fragmented version of practice group meetings once a week, where everyone sits down and you go around the table saying, I'm working on this, I'm working on that, and the people that are working the most say the least, and vice versa.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. I don't miss those things, I must say. Those conversations in our organisation are incredibly efficient. and otherwise, one thing you'd like to keep, or hope doesn't disappear?
Similar to what Barton said, in a slightly different flip, I think flexibility is the big thing. So there were people in my workplace, the secretary that I work with was told, or the secretaries were told generally, you can't work from home, you need to be in the office to do your job. Pandemic proves that's not the case. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that initiatives like that, and the secretarial team is at the moment still working from home and doing a great job, and I have noticed no issues. So I hope that flexibility continues and increases for everyone.
No, that's all excellent observations. Let me ask. Sorry, just bear with me. Yes. Did you take, and I think I know the answer because I've been stalking you on LinkedIn for 2 of you. Did you take the opportunity of the pandemic to do something extra? Gain some extra credit in a particular area? Did you say, oh, I've got this extra time on my hands, potentially, I'm now going to try and do something?
Yes, my team and I are learning Italian.
Oh, cool. How's that going?
Molto bene.
Yes, that's not fair. I can't judge. Aaron, you look like you're going to jump in with something.
Yeah, I did online courses. I'm doing online courses.
Yep.
I found them great. So I use Coursera, and I've done 3 courses so far.
Yep.
Kind of very linked to the work I do. So I did an energy-related course, and I've also done kind of some soft skill courses and some technology courses as well. So that's been really great. I really like doing those.
Barton, can you top that?
I've done far more exercise in the pandemic than I did pre-pandemic. I think I just my partner Kat she's really exercise. She really enjoys exercise. I don't. She before we sort of started working out just before the pandemic, and then once it hit. Because we couldn't really go outside, we just had to, I guess, innovate and try and do things inside our flat. And sort of we have a little courtyard between a bunch of us and another flat, so we go out there and do things as well. So I've noticed that I am physically stronger and fitter than I was when we started, and I can nearly do a pull up. I'm nearly there. I can do banded pull-ups, but I can get my chin just to the bar. I can't quite get it over. So my goal before the end of the pandemic is to be able to do a chin up. So
nice. No, good on you. No, I've heard people say anyone that can improve their fitness during the pandemic is a special person. So well done, Barton. Final question now to each of you. And it's the same one that I ask to every guest that comes on the podcast. I ask, what is your current obsession? It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's something outside of work, something outside of family and relationships that you are doing that a lot of people wouldn't know about. Fiona, it might even be your learning Italian that you've already mentioned. Anyone want to have a crack at that question?
Barton can go first.
When I was 7, and through to about 7 till I was about 11 or 12, I played basketball, and I really enjoyed it because I think I saw the movie Space Jam, and I thought, oh, that looks great. So I played
easy.
Yeah, I was quite tall when I was younger, so it was pretty easy. And then I stopped playing for a long time, and I stopped watching it. And then last year, I thought, screw it, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go full in and go back and start watching the NBA again, which has worked out really well because we've been in a pandemic. And I went back and I've been following the NBA this year, and the playoffs are on at the moment, and the finals start on Wednesday, and I've just been loving it. It's been fantastic. The way that they've done a bubble down in Florida. And the way that they've presented the games has been fantastic, and
it looks surprisingly good, doesn't it? The way they can make it not look like they're playing to no audience.
No, and it's been good because you can hear the players a little bit more what they're saying. They swear a lot more than you think.
And who's your team, Barton? And who's your favourite player?
My team is Philadelphia, the 76ers.
Right. Oh, bad luck.
I know they got knocked out pretty early. My favourite player is Ben Simmons because
good Australian player.
Yeah, I've got his jersey.
No jump shot though, Barton. Come on.
No, but that's not what it's his defence.
Yep.
You know, he can defend anyone in the league, and he's first team all defence again this year. So I don't think they'll have a good year next year either. Probably it just depends on who they get as a coach. It's good they got Brett Brown out of there though. But the finals start on Wednesday. I'm really Miami because I don't want LeBron to get another ring.
Really?
No, not for the Lakers. Who wants the Lakers to get another ring?
Los Angeles.
It's
their year. It's a sentimental year for LA, isn't it? In basketball terms.
Although I would like to see it's kind of justification for Jimmy Butler leaving the 76ers and going to Miami. I like that narrative of like I got out of this organization and then I went and won a ring. So that's my obsession at the moment.
Right, and your pick for the finals? Like you said, who you want to win. Who do you think will win?
Oh, I think the Lakers will probably win. Yeah, but I want Miami to win.
Okay, nice. How about you, Fiona? Are you just going to say it's your Italian, or have you got some other surprise there?
I wasn't going to say this, but then I did say the Italian thing. I don't want to be boring. I don't know if you know this about me, Alistair, but I did a fine arts degree along with law, and I majored in creative writing.
Mm-hmm.
So in writing a novel.
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
Yes, it is a murder mystery
Yep.
novel. And I've written 20,000 words. So I think I'm about a quarter of a way there.
And
So
how long, sorry, I'm naive, how long does a novel have to be, or how long are you wanting yours to be? How far through is 20,000 words?
So it's usually between 80 and 100,000 words.
Yep.
Potentially a quarter of the way through. But
Okay.
it's like constant rewriting.
Yep.
So it's hard to progress because you're never really happy with it. And sometimes you just kind of got to be like, okay, I'm going to write like a page today just to force words on the page. And then once they're out there, you can actually just basically delete them and start again. But yeah.
And what's the end of that process is like, do you, I imagine it's relatively easy to self-publish books. Is that the plan to do it, or just for you?
Really, it's mostly just for me because I want to have written a novel, and it's also for my mum who loves my writing and is very encouraging. So she's kind of been reading, like, you know, probably 2 chapters at a time kind of thing.
Nice.
Aaron is to read it until I've finished it. So,
well, I must admit, I love reading non-fiction. I've never been much of a fiction reader, but if you were willing to share, I would sort of enthusiastically read your work, Fiona. So keep me posted.
yeah, well, thank you.
Lucky last, Aaron.
What
are you obsessed with?
Learning guitar. So just before the pandemic, I decided to take up guitar, and it's been great because I can play it at home constantly.
Acoustic?
It's really good.
Acoustic guitar.
Yep.
Get up very quickly.
Yeah, he's obsessed. Like, every day when I'm trying to watch TV, when I'm trying to do anything, it's always in the background, which is good.
Okay. And so, sorry, your TikTok handle is, where am I following this?
Not on TikTok yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
for so long as it continues to operate in the Western world. That's excellent. Guys, thank you. I really enjoyed catching up, enjoyed sharing your thoughts about all of this. So thanks for joining.
Thanks, Alice.
Thanks a
Very
lot,
nice.
Alice. That's been
Thank
great
you.
talk.
That was Fiona Thatcher, Aaron Brooks and Barton Donaldson giving us the millennial viewpoint on what it's like to work through the pandemic and where things might go from here. And I am Alistair Fitzgerald, the CEO of Field. Field is the leading solution in the Australian market for lease portfolio due diligence. If you are buying or selling commercial real estate assets, or you're a tenant looking to better understand a large portfolio of leases, or you're involved in transaction advisory where leases are a critical component of the assets being considered, then let Field turn those leases into action. Find out more at fieldql.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.